Horrifying monsters of Greek mythology. The monsters in Greek mythology were the nemesis of the gods and goddesses, and would strike terror in the hearts of the ancient Greek populace. There are so many monsters within the vast mythology of the ancient Greeks that it is almost impossible to single out all of them. Thus, only the most famous and significant monsters will be highlighted and discussed. The monsters made up a significant portion of Greek mythology and were ever present in the myths and tales of the ancient Greeks, often appearing in legends regarding epic battles between the Greek pantheon and the ferocious monsters. Medusa. Medusa was one of three Gorgon sisters. Her sisters were named Steno and Uriel. However, Medusa was by far the most famous of the sisters. Interestingly enough, Medusa was the only one of her sisters to not be immortal. It's sometimes said that the goddess Gaia was the mother of the Gorgon sisters. However, according to other sources, Medusa's parents were the early sea deities Perseus and Ceto. However, what mythologists do agree on is that the Gorgons were all birthed at sea. Medusa is generally thought to have been unmarried. However, he was thought to be the lover of Poseidon. Their union resulted in Pegasus and Chrysaor. Pegasus was a winged horse, and Chrysaor was the Greek hero who wielded a golden sword. According to legend, Medusa at one point in time was a beautiful woman. She was believed to be a priestess of Athena and made a vow of chastity. However, upon breaking this vow with her lover Poseidon, she was cursed. As a result of her affair, Athena punished her by turning the once beautiful priestess into an ugly monster. Athena would turn Medusa's hair into multiple venomous snakes, as well as change Medusa's once beautiful skin to a greenish hue. Upon this hideous transformation, it was said that anybody who met eyes with Medusa would turn to stone. In one of the major myths surrounding the Gorgon, the demigod Perseus was sent on a quest to kill Medusa, in which he was assisted with the aid of gifts by the Greek pantheon. As mentioned in the previous chapter, Perseus was awarded many magical gifts to defeat Medusa, one of which was a mirror-like shield, which would prove invaluable in slaying the monster. Perseus managed to fight his foe's reflection thanks to the mirror shield he was given by Athena, and as such defeated the Gorgon by decapitating her. Hydra. The Hydra was a ferocious monster in Greek mythology, and was a formidable foe and posed a deadly threat to the Greek pantheon in many ways. The Hydra was a serpentine beast that donned multiple heads, and was one of the guardians of the underworld. Each one of Hydra's snake-like teeth contained razor-sharp teeth, and he could strike at his foe with all of his heads at once. The Hydra also possessed poisonous breath that would result in immediate death to any human in contact with it. What is worse, though, is that even if you managed to cut off one of Hydra's heads, two more would regenerate in his place. He was a truly formidable opponent, and so strong that many of the gods were terrified of him. The Hydra did not only have snake heads, but his whole body was snake-like, and just like his breath was poisonous. It was believed that when he slithered, he would leave a poisonous trail in his wake. The Hydra was large, but not as large as one would assume. The Hydra was large compared to other snakes, but he was by no means a giant. In fact, it is said that the beast's body was around the size of an average man. However, with the Hydra's multiple heads, he would stand quite tall in stature. The Hydra was known to reside in the Amymone Spring, deep within the underworld. The Amymone Spring was located in a cave, and provided the monstrous beast with the protection it needed while it slumbered. The Hydra slept most of its life and would only venture out when it needed to feed. The Hydra was believed to feast on townsfolk and villagers. Due to this, the myth of the Hydra struck fear in rural Greece far and wide. According to legend, it is believed Hera, Zeus's wife, raised the Hydra with the intention of sending the beast to kill Herakles. Herakles, as we know, was a demigod who possessed incredible strength and was a formidable foe for any creature. However, Hera was certain that the beast could be enough to end Zeus's son's life. Herakles overheard what Hera was plotting and was also aware of the terror the serpent was issuing upon local villagers and townsfolk. Herakles decided he needed to rid Greece of the Hydra menace. Herakles traveled with his nephew Lolos to kill the serpent once and for all. Herakles drew the Hydra from its slumber by shooting flaming arrows into Amymone Springs Cave. The Hydra, infuriated, launched himself into battle with the Greek demigod. Herakles sliced the many heads of the serpent. Usually the Hydra's heads would simply grow back, but Herakles' nephew Lolos sealed the Hydra's severed neck shut with a torch, preventing them from regenerating. The Hydra, unable to regenerate its heads, only had one head remaining, in which Herakles sliced off with one mighty blow. The Hydra was slain, and Herakles buried the serpent under an enormous rock to ensure the beast would forever be beaten. Typhon. There were many gods and monsters in Greek mythology, but very rarely was a monster also a god. However, that was exactly the case with Typhon. Typhon was described as the most fearsome and powerful creature in all Greek mythology, and it is no wonder that his very name stirred up so much fear among the ancient Greek populace. Typhon was the child of Gaia, the goddess of the earth, and Tartarus, the murderous bottomless pit of the earth. According to certain myths, Hera desired to create a god that was even more powerful than Zeus, and thus had Gaia and Tartarus mate. It could be argued that Typhon is the product of all the hate that existed in Hera's heart, and her jealousy towards Zeus personified. Typhon was a giant so tall that his head was said to have touched the stars themselves. Typhon possessed a torso of a man, however. His legs were made of vipers which would hiss and attack as the giant slithered. Typhon's head was said to have had 100 snakes hanging off of it, and each one would make the sound of different animals. The monster's eyes were blood red that would glow. Almost anybody who laid eyes on the monster would be stunned in terror. Typhon also possessed a savage jaw, which would breathe fire. The monster's body had over 100 different types of wings, and his hands, like his legs, were made of snakes. Some accounts describe Typhon as like a fire-breathing dragon with 100 heads who would never sleep. Typhon married Echidna, another half-human and half-snake hybrid. With their union, Typhon was considered the father of all monsters, with Echidna as the mother of all monsters. The pair would go down to spawn horrific creatures that would terrorize Greece and bring chaos to the world. Some of their children include Cerberus, the Hydra, the Chimera, the Nemean lion, Ladon, Caucasian eagle, the eagle which would eat Prometheus's liver every day for 30 years, and many more. The greatest myth that surrounds this ferocious monster is undoubtedly his fierce battle with Zeus. Typhon and Zeus had many epic battles. In one of these battles, Typhon destroyed countless cities, threw mountains in his blinding rage, and had his eyes set on demolishing Mount Olympus. Typhon's brute strength terrified many of the Olympian gods and goddesses. They were so scared of the monster that almost all gods changed into their animal forms and fled from Mount Olympus. Only Dionysius, Athena, and Zeus stayed in their regular godly forms. Athena at one point in the battle called Zeus a coward. This enraged Zeus to an unimaginable level. Zeus attacked Typhon before the monster could destroy Mount Olympus, to show Athena that he was not a coward. It is said that Zeus attacked Typhon with 100 lightning bolts, which managed to corner the beast in his tracks. Due to Zeus cornering the beast, he managed to overpower Typhon and cast the monster in the bottomless pit at Tartarus. Once Typhon was in the bottomless pit of Tartarus, Zeus entrapped the monster by covering the pit with Mount Etna, so that the beast would never be able to escape again. It was believed that all volcanic eruptions were a result of Typhon trying to escape his prison of Tartarus, and the lava that erupted was the fire that the monster would breathe. However, it is important to note that this battle was the last of many battles. Typhon and the Greek gods engaged in a 10,000-year war, and thus Zeus only managed to end the war thousands of years later by trapping the monster in the same pit that was half responsible for his birth. Cerberus. Cerberus, also known as the Hound of Hades, was a vicious three-headed hound that guarded the gates of the underworld. He made sure that the spirits of the dead were allowed to enter the underworld, but were never allowed to leave. Cerberus was a child of Typhon and Echidna, half woman, half snake, and was part of a ferocious family of monsters which included the Hydra, Chimera, and Orthus. Upon guarding the gates of the underworld, the monstrous hound would only be tricked 3 times, once by the strength of Herakles, once by the music of Orpheus, and once by the Sibyl of Cumae, who tricked the beast with a cake. To understand Cerberus, one should understand how dogs were perceived in the ancient world. In ancient Greece, dogs were seen as wild animals who defied domestication. Although many dogs were companions to many Greeks and were often used as guard dogs, there were still many negative connotations attached to their canine companions. Dogs would often roam the streets of Greece in packs and scavenge throughout towns and cause havoc. Thus, Cerberus was the embodiment of these negative traits that dogs were perceived to possess. However, the monster Cerberus did not only possess the traits of the fearful qualities of ancient canines, but also possessed a mixture of traits from many other feared animals. Thus, Cerberus was an amalgamation of ancient Greek nightmares. Although Cerberus is often described as a 3-headed dog, there was more to it that surrounded this legend. Cerberus was a monstrous dog that had 3 heads, a serpent's tail, a mane made of snakes, and had claws of a lion. According to some legends, Cerberus's heads were meant to represent the past, the future, and the present. However, other legends suggest the hound's heads represented birth, youth, and old age.